All right, hello Tea family and welcome today. We are here and we're going to be talking about myths. I wanted to say if you're here, please say hello in the chat or the comments, depending on the platform that you're with us on. And if I sound a little congested, I am. It is allergy season in Kansas, and we just had some really almost hurricane force winds a couple of days ago that really decided to send everything that is bad about allergies into the system for me and everyone else in Kansas to enjoy. And so many of us are now dealing with sinus issues, so I apologize if I sound a little off. I am definitely not enjoying this part of springtime in Kansas with the allergy seasons. But please say hello, share what you're drinking with us in the comments or the chat. And we want to give you a special shout out and welcome if this is your first time joining us. Today, we are going to be blowing up the biggest myths about loose leaf tea. Some of these you've definitely heard before, and there might even be one that shocks you. But by the end of our video, you're going to know some truth about loose leaf tea so you won't fall for those false myths again. So again, just say hello, let us know that you're here. And in the comments or chat, I want you to put one thing that you've heard about tea that you're not sure if it's true or not. And that is the sound of a mouse falling, but that's okay. I don't. Hey, are we still there? Are we still live? I'm hoping we are. Okay.
We got you.
Am I back on? Okay. So the mouse fell, and then my handy dandy assistant, who is a great help, went to take the mouse. Okay. No more mouse issues today. I'm hoping that I'm going to hear from my handy dandy assistant that we're back up. This is how it is when you go live. Sometimes life happens. So we're going to start over. We're going to be busting out the myths about tea today. So in the comments or the chat, please list one thing that you have heard about loose leaf tea that you're not sure if it's true or not, and I will get a chance at some point to answer those. Meanwhile, we're going to hope we don't have any more technical glitches. It has been that kind of a day. Again, I apologize if I sound very congested. I am. There's a lot of sinus stuff going on from the wind dragging the dust all over the place. So we are actually going to start off with that. So let's see if your question about one thing you're not sure about tea or not makes our list of myths today. But we have 5 myths that we're going to be completely busting. I feel like the Mythbusters. You know that show? Anyway, we're going to be the tea Mythbusters today. And there's a surprise in there for some people. But first, I want to see who is getting that extra 10% off at our April 10th live tea party. And I promised you this, and we've got a new way to look, and I'm going to draw. So what you see here are all the little, on the second camera, did you see that? We've got 2 cameras today. That's why we're having so much fun. All right, so this one, last week you had to enter in on chat and put a heart in there, and you were going to get an extra 10% off. And Dominique got it. So Dominique, when we have our April 10th, if you're there, you'll get an extra 10% off. We're going to put that to the side, and we're going to hide our tea camera. Oh, excuse me. Excuse my sniffles. All right. Congratulations, Dominique. We appreciate it. We will see you on the 10th, if not sooner. Okay. So today we're going to be making some Maiden's Blush. Now, this is a caffeine-free herbal blend. It is made with rooibos and rose petals. And I'm going to put that up there. And handy dandy assistant, is our water ready?
Yay!
Now, we do recommend boiling water with this and a 3-minute first-time brew. Although I do want to say that this is good both hot and cold. give you an idea of what it looks like. We have been making a lot of this because we've got some different things coming up, and we are packaging for the new year and the new event season. So I do use the standard 2.5. And so I can use my perfect cup, and then we'll use this to package up later today because we don't let it sit in there for very long. Be careful with the mouse. We've had enough technical issues. All right, that's good. All right, and then 3 minutes. Now, one of the things I really like about this tea is that when we use this at events, it is wonderful because anything that's left over, that obviously gets colder, and it is a perfect evening or afternoon sipping tea. People will sometimes, when they're trying the samples and everything, they'll accuse us of adding honey to it. And we always say, hey, there's no sugar or sweeteners in any of our teas. But what you're getting and what people think is honey is actually the sweetness of the rose petals. Now, if I was going to put honey in this afterwards, if I wanted it a little bit sweeter, I would add an infused vanilla honey to it, and it is going to just bring out that much more. Now, this was originally supposed to be a June-only tea, but it is now year-round. It is one of our caffeine-free blends. It is very, very popular. It is surprising. People expect the rose petals to bring a very heavy floral note, and they don't. They just bring a sweetness that balances with the rooibos, makes a really delicious sipping tea. And I did want to go with a caffeine-free blend this close to the end of the day for me today. And so that's what we're going. All right. So I'm trying to look through the comments. I don't see any questions yet or anything. I see Stephanie's drinking Emerald Garden. I see Kim's drinking plain water. I get it. I've had a lot of that myself lately. Diane's drinking Ancient Green Dragon. That was a very close call. The other one I've been drinking a lot, I will tell you, with the sinuses and stuff, is Lemon Zinger, and then I've added some fresh rosemary in it, and it's really, really helpful. We should be coming up on 3 minutes. It's got a minute left. Got a minute left. All right. So we are doing Maiden's Blush today, and I do want to also remind you, April 10th, I know Dominique's got 10% off, but there are going to be some extra deals going on. We are going to have some tea blends. I stopped when my sinuses went. Fortunately, my taste is still intact, but we are looking at a white tea blend that'll only be available at that show. Will also be some breakfast rose that is only brought in at special times for our quarterly sessions and things like that. So there'll be a lot to offer. So Kim introduced her daughter-in-law to Ancient Green Dragon the other day. She likes it too. I'm glad. That's one of the fun things about sharing teas and sharing your favorite teas with friends and family and things like that. It's just like a social event, and I love that kind of thing. And at the end of the day, you can tell I took my medicine this morning and the 12-hour stuff is starting to wear off. I apologize. How are we doing on time? It should be getting close.
4, 3,
should be getting close.
Whoa.
All right. Okay. And what you can't see is I really do have my table runner is my Easter table runner, where these are all inset and quilted. All right. So you can see that really beautiful color. And the taste is so, so good. All right. So let's bust some myths about tea. So myth number 1, loose leaf tea is too expensive. So I really wanted to start with this one because it is the biggest reason people hesitate to switch from tea bags to loose tea. People will claim it's convenience, and sometimes that might be the case, but you can bag your own tea, as we've talked about before. But a lot of times when people really get down to it, they're like, well, that's really pricey, until they realize like an ounce of tea is 30 to 33 cups. And they're like, oh, and it becomes a game changer. So I actually did some math on this. The truth is that loose leaf tea actually typically saves you money in the long run because it can be brewed multiple times. And so that 1 teaspoon of tea that you saw me in here, I'll be able to have 3 cups of Maiden's Blush on that. And so we decided to crunch the numbers. For those of you that know, I'm a number cruncher anyway. So we did a live price breakdown. And what I did was I took a cup of a very popular blend of lavender chamomile tea. And so good. Okay, and so it costs $4.39 for 18 bags in my local grocery store. So really probably about 24 to 25 cents per cup. Now, the closest I could come to something similar that we produce is Peacefulness. And because it can be brewed 3 or more times, that came in at 23 cents a cup. Now you're like, well, 2-3 cents a cup, but the quality and the flavor is so much better. So I just think it's better to get the higher quality and really get the better flavors, less bitter. And that was a very inexpensive generic brand of the tea. If I actually went to the brand name on that one, as opposed to generic, it worked out at 27 to 28 cents per cup versus, again, the 23 cents per cup for the loose leaf tea. So we busted that myth. Sorry, loose leaf tea is not more expensive, and mostly because you can get more than one brew out of it. So let's go to myth number 2. Tea bags are just as good as loose leaf tea. Now, this is one we hear occasionally. The difference is the quality and what's inside. And that is why we have, I know you saw a little of it, but that's why we actually have the second camera today. Okay. Now, I just have to find where everything got put. So what I have here is, yep, I covered the name. And so I'm going to switch to this camera for a second. And, all right. So here is a tea bag. And I'm going to pour that in there. Fortunately, we still have this from the last time I did this experiment, but you can see, I'm really trying to, here, let me see if I switch to this camera. You see how it's just dust. It's fannings. It's like ground up. It's almost like coffee grounds to me, or smaller, but they're not, like, there's nothing there. Now, I want you to compare that with our breakfast blend. So that was just a breakfast blend. I wanted to make it the same kind of tea so that it would be a fair comparison. And look at that. Let's see if I can bring it over here. So you've got this, where you've got these huge pieces of tea, comparatively speaking, versus the dust. So which one of these looks like a better option to you? You have your standard loose leaf and you have this. And we know that when it's powdered like this, it actually adds, it's higher in tannic acid, so it's going to be more bitter. And there you are. I literally just opened a bag of loose leaf tea and compared it, a breakfast blend, and compared it to our breakfast blend where, you know, you can see, trying to get my angle right with all the lights in here. There you go. Like, there's a piece of tea that I can actually pick up. So these tiny broken pieces, they're left over from high quality. They steep fast, but they lose flavor fast too, which is why you can really only use them that one time. So this is why we say even some of the higher quality, you're still getting a lot of the dust. And when you move to a true loose leaf change, it's a game changer. It's absolutely a game changer. So there you go. There's our second camera, so you can actually see what we're doing. And I'm going to pull that out of there now. Okay. So myth number 3, you can't actually oversteep tea. All right. So this is not true. And I've talked about this before. The longer the tea is in the cup, the more it steeps, the stronger it gets, yes, but also the more the tannic acid builds up, and that's what makes the tea bitter. This is why if you've oversteeped tea when making even some sweet tea or sun tea or other things, doesn't really matter how much sugar you add to it, it still has that bitterness to it. And that's why you've oversteeped it. It's full of tannic acid. It is going to be bitter. This is one of the reasons why people who said, oh, I've had tea, but it bothered my stomach. And this is why, because they're sensitive to the tannic acid. So if you want stronger tea, use more tea leaves. Do not steep it longer. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to own up to some stuff here. I want you to put in the chat, me, or the comments, me, if you have ever oversteeped a cup of tea and made it way too bitter. So go ahead and put in the chat or the comments and just say me. I would do that, but my keyboard is not accessible right now. I have done it myself in the past, especially. This is why I always do timers now for my tea so that I don't oversteep. Thank you for your honesty, Stephanie. I know I've done it too. It's unfortunate. And Kim, see, we've all done it at times. It happens. It just becomes so handy dandy assistant getting there often before I married the tea snob. I don't know if I'm a tea snob. I just don't like bitter, icky tea. I guess that makes me a tea snob. I don't know. All right, so we've all done it, but it's one of those things to consider. It is why I am very much one that'll go and I start one thing and then that leads me to start another project, which means, oh, well, I wanted to get this, but then I saw this needs to be put away. So I go to put that away and then something else gets put away. And then I do eventually get back. Unlike some people, I get back to my original task. But if I don't set that timer so that it reminds me, I will completely forget. In fact, we have a timer on our microwave and a timer on our stove that I use all the time when I'm making my tea. And in the morning, if I know I'm like packing my lunch, or many times the handy dandy assistant is packing my lunch, but I'm trying to gather stuff together to go into the office to work or anything like that, I have to be very particular because the microwave clock, when you don't have anything in it, when you use it as a timer, will go off once and that's it. Whereas the oven clock goes off constantly until you shut it off. And most of the time I need to use the oven one because otherwise I completely forget about my tea and it can potentially become better. So this is why I have timers. And this is why I do. So Diane brewed her green dragon for 4 minutes thinking it was Irish sunrise. Diane, was it bitter? It might not have been if the water was cool enough. You might have been okay. But that's the other thing, oversteeping, not good. The other part of that is something we're going to talk about right now, which is green tea. Myth number 4, all green tea is bitter. Green tea gets a really horrific, bad reputation, but it's not really naturally bitter. There are a couple of different ways that people brew it incorrectly. And number 1 is they use boiling water. About 175 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit, excuse me. Sorry. Again, allergy season in Kansas. Oh, all right. 175 to 180 is the right temperature. You only need to brew green tea for the first brew 1 minute, unless it has a freeze-dried fruit in it. And then I recommend an extra minute just to allow that freeze-dried fruit to rehydrate. And then it would be 2 minutes for the first brew. And then each time you're only adding 1 minute to the brew. So if you're brewing Ancient Green Dragon, you would only do 2 minutes for that second brew. And what Diane says is it was a little bit bitter. The water was a black tea temperature. So she took the extra brewing and probably burned some of the delicate leaves. That's what it is. So often it's not the green tea itself, it's the blend, or it's been overbrewed or brewed too hot or something on that idea. But green tea is very delicate, so you have to be careful of certain things. One of the things that it can be, though, is I'm going to come back to something I just said, which is the blend. When we started to create Emerald Garden, I was not a huge green tea fan. When I drank it, yes, it was okay. And our son, he's the reason why we have Ancient Green Dragon. He loved the jasmine green tea with the vanilla and things like that in it. But it was okay to me, but it always had that bitter bite or aftertaste to it. And I just didn't like that. So when we were creating green teas for Nona's, I didn't want that. And so I didn't want to have sugar in it or anything like that. And that's when we were playing with the blends, when we found Emerald Garden, we found this combination of green teas that didn't have the bitter aftertaste when properly made. And that is what really started me to really enjoying more and more green teas. So key takeaway from myth number 4, don't get it too hot. You're going to burn the leaves, which makes it bitter. And then try not to overbrew it. Green tea needs that gentler touch. And I think we've all at one point or another forgotten or used boiling water on our green tea. So I know Diane's not alone in it. She said she just cured it by adding some more honey into it. What I actually often find now is, because we go back and forth between green tea and black tea a lot here, is I'll go to brew my Serene Sunrise in the morning and I'll think, oh, that brewed up quickly. That's great. And then I realize I only brewed it to the 175 degrees because somebody, usually my handy dandy assistant, had a cup of green tea earlier and it didn't go back to boiling. And so we do that a lot, and that's okay. It's just not as strong a flavor because you haven't extracted as much, but better to brew your tea at a lower temperature on accident and then be able to bring it back up to the higher temperature than the other way. All right. Excuse me as I sniffle along. All right. Myth number 5. Caffeine in tea works the same as coffee. All right. Yes, I do blame the other person that lives in my house when there's only 2 of us and I predominantly drink black teas. Yes, I do blame the other person in the house, but anyway, myth number 5, caffeine in tea works the same as coffee. A lot of people think tea gives you that same caffeine crash like coffee does, but the way tea delivers caffeine is completely different from coffee. So coffee is really good for that quick jolt, but it also has that fast caffeine crash. Whereas tea has a slower release caffeine and it has the L-theanine for a calmer focus. And so it doesn't have that crash because it's just kind of a more steady, almost like a time released, slow released kind of caffeine. So this is why people don't always get that same jolt when they drink their tea. It takes a minute, but that makes sense because remember, tea is meant to be sipped and enjoyed. It's a leisurely experience. Most people that I see drinking coffee, they're not drinking it as a leisurely experience. They're drinking it to get as much caffeine in their bodies as they possibly can before they start their day. I'm not really talking about anybody in particular, maybe. But that's true for everyone. And so that coffee, quick jolt, fast crash, whereas tea is going to be more of a slow time release caffeine, give you more of a calm focus. So if you want energy from your tea, you're going to want a higher caffeine blend, like a breakfast blend or a morning Irish. But one of the best teas for a calm focus is going to be like Ancient Green Dragon, which is actually a little heavier in the L-theanine. And so that would be a much better one if you wanted that calmer, slower, time-released focus throughout the day. So be honest with me in the chat or the comments. Do you feel a difference between when you drink caffeine and tea with regard to the caffeine and how quickly it comes and goes? Has anybody noticed this in particular? It's just so good. Okay. All right. So I promised you 5, but before we wrap up, there's another myth. Gonna give you a bonus. Loose leaf tea expires faster than a store-bought bagged tea. This is not true. This myth is not as true. It does expire in 1 to 2 years for loose leaf tea. Usually the typical is we say a year 18 months, but a year is really good. But if you're keeping it in an airtight container away from light and strong smells and air and moisture and things like that. However, improperly stored tea is going to degrade much, much faster. And so it's going to be a little less so than when you store it properly, it'll last longer than when you don't. Now, with regard to pre-bagged supermarket teas, they are not really, I mean, you can keep them in a box, but even if you put them in the container, they're so small and they already are so packed with tannins, they're already biodegrading. And that's one of the things is as you take, a piece like this, that's, here, let me put it here. So that's really kind of big. And that will eventually break down and it's going to lose some. It's one of the reasons why we make our stuff in the small batches in these jars and then immediately bag them in pouches like this. And the reason why we do that is because there's no light. Now, this is one of the bones that I pick with other people at tea festivals and things. They have this wonderful opening here that has a clear plastic and it looks really pretty and you get to see the teas. I get it, but that allows light in and so their tea is going to degrade faster. It is not going to stay as much as ours. Ours have a foil pack inside. And so that is one of the things that I have to say that I don't like about that packaging. I know it would look prettier, but to be fair, I'm trying to keep the tea as flavorful and as protected as possible. So yeah, and it does get, yes, we do heat seal. Every once in a while, something will not heat seal, the world miss month. I know we're not perfect here. We don't claim to be, but we try and go through and double check all of them. So if you have learned something new about tea today, go ahead and put mind blown in the chat or the comments, or you could put surprised. If your mind wasn't blown, but if you were surprised, go ahead. I do want to remind everybody we're going to have our Tea and Treasures live tea sale April 10th, 7 p.m. And I am working. One of the things that we will be focusing on are some gifts for Easter and Mother's Day and springtime. And I'm looking forward to it. I also want to bring you up to date. I know there are those of you out there that love our Harmony tea. That is our green tea with strawberries and oranges. And we just literally last week, in fact, we're still freeze drying strawberries right now. The truck came in from Florida. They literally got here 24 hours after they had been picked. We purchased our organic strawberries from a local family farm that comes in and does some deliveries up in this way. And we already bought them and they are freeze drying. So we will be ready to start making Harmony this next week. And that will be at the show. But one of the other things that we'll be doing at this Tea and Treasures live tea sale is there will definitely be an Easter sampler where instead of having it in an Advent tin or anything like that, we're going to have Easter eggs. So instead of the kids going and finding Easter eggs that have candy or money or a little toy or something in them, you can go and have the kids hide the Easter eggs for you, and you can find different teas in them. This is one where you're definitely going to not want to lose one for a while so that you can enjoy it. But that's one of the things that we will be having. All right, which one of these tea myths surprised you the most? Go ahead and put that. I do want to say thanks for coming and hanging with me as I'm all congested and not doing as well today. I want you to go enjoy some good tea, and I will see you next week. Now, next week, we're going to be making a mocktail, and we're going to be talking about some other things that you can do with your tea other than just drink it. I think you're going to want to be there. There might even be some ice cream. Not guaranteeing it, but there might even be some ice cream. So if anybody else has any questions, just go ahead and put them in the chat. Meanwhile, have a wonderful week, and I will see you.
Stephanie has cut off caffeine coffee.
Stephanie has cut off caffeinated coffee. It's only tea for me. We are hearing that more and more. People are moving from coffee to tea, and they're having a lot fewer stomach issues, and they're really enjoying it more. You are not alone in that, Stephanie. I know that I'm not a coffee drinker, never have been, but there are a lot of people out there that are making the switch. You are not alone. So, any other questions or anything that I missed? Not that we can think of. All right. Well, everybody have a great week. Hopefully, the allergy season will be over for next week, and we will see you all next Sunday. Have a great one.